So, it's time to get started on the Hello World project. If this is your first time running Xcode, or if it's just the first time today you're running Xcode, when you start it up, you should see a screen that looks something like this. And you can click the Get Started by creating a new Xcode project button right here to see this screen. Let's put it up there in the middle. However, it's very possible that for some reason you won't see this screen, in which case you also have the option of going to the File menu, choosing New, and then Project from the New menu. And once again, we're back at the same screen. Now we want to make sure that we're creating an iOS application, and the type of application is a single view application, so then we'll click Next. Now for our product name, we're simply going to type the name that we want to show up under our little app icon. So we're going to go with Hello World. For those of you who took part in my class earlier, you're going to realize that this is in direct contravention to what I told you before, which was not to put any spaces and to put the word project on the end. But what I forgot was that this will actually be the name of our app, which means that this is for human consumption, and we're allowed to use spaces whenever we're creating something that is for people to actually see and respond to. The need to not use spaces only applies when we're writing code that is just for the computer. Okay, if it's not already filled in, make your organization name Miracosta High School, and then change the organization identifier so that it says org.mbusd. Finally, make sure that you have the language set to Swift, the devices set to Universal, and then we're ready to click the Next button. And now we're going to pick a place where we store our project. So typically if you're in the computer lab, this is very simple. You just go to your Documents folder here, and you could go ahead and put it right in there. Now, if you're using your own personal laptop and you want to create a special place for your documents, you would create the New Folder button first. Create a folder where you'll keep all of your Xcode projects for this class. So you might call it Xcode Projects. Create. And then now you can click the Create button. Okay, so now when the screen opens up, we're going to see this view, and we're ready to get started. So, what do we want to do first? Well, at this point, if you were following along with the written PDF, I suggest that you go check out the Xcode environment tutorial and video that goes with it, and it will help to teach you a little bit about all of these various controls and buttons that are just littered all over the screen. There's so many things you could click on here in Xcode that it can be overwhelming. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust the size of my Xcode window here to fill up most of my available space so that we can see it clearly. Okay. And then let's just run through what was in that Xcode environment that we actually need to do to get ready for our next steps. So if you took a break and went and did the Xcode environment, what you very quickly learned was that we clicked on Main Storyboard, and then we also clicked on the we went ahead and we put in a label here, scrolling through my object library. And again, this is covered in more detail in the Xcode environment tutorial. I went ahead and I dragged a label over here into my project, and I resized it to make it a little bit larger. Okay, what else did I do in the Xcode environment tutorial? Well, let's see. So far, that looks good. And next, I did something else very exciting. Oh, that's right. Next, we're ready to actually see our code window. So this is the storyboard. We want to see the code where we're actually going to create our computer code. So I click this little view here, this little view icon, the Assistant Editor view. And now I can see my storyboard on the left and the code that goes with it on the right. All right, so what are we going to do next? Well, we're going to create what's called an outlet for this label. And what an outlet does is it gives me a way in my computer code to talk about this object. So everything that we're dragging into the storyboard can be considered an object, and I need some way in my computer code to know that that is the object that I want to talk to. So I'm going to right click and drag over here, and I'm going to put it right under this line that says class view controller, but it's actually okay as long as it is anywhere not inside one of these things that already exists here. So I'm going to put it above them, and then I have to come up with a name, and I'm going to be even a little bit more strict than I was in class, and I'm going to add more detail. Now eventually this label that I'm creating is going to change to say hello world. So I'm going to call this my hello world label, and then I'm creating an outlet. So I'm going to add the word outlet to the end. Now that's a lot to type, but Xcode is going to make it so I almost never, in fact probably never, actually have to type that whole long word, so it doesn't really matter that it's long. So hello world label outlet, I'll make it easier for you to read there, is what we want to type. And then once we have that typed in completely, we'll click the connect button. Let's zoom back down. All right, we're going to click connect. All right, and what I've just done is I've created something called an outlet. Notice it says IB outlet here with a little @ symbol, and there's this little dot right here. When I hover over the dot, notice that my label over in my storyboard is highlighted, and it tells me what kind of object it is. It's a UI label. I know that because it says UI label right here, and when I was hovering over it, it said label over there in the storyboard. UI stands for user interface, and you'll usually see that in front of all of your objects that appear over here. So it's a label, but over here it'll say UI label. Okay, so I've now created an outlet, and that was pretty much everything that was in all of the steps that apply to this project that were in our Xcode environment tour. So I'm going to pause the video for a second here while I get ready to continue. Okay, so if you were following along in the companion PDF that goes with this video, there's a section on what to do if you accidentally name your outlet incorrectly. And I'm not going to go into that in this video because I'm trying to keep it relatively short. So reference the PDF if that happened to you and you need to fix the name here. Okay, so what do we do next? Well, next what we want to do is add a say hello button. So we're going to click and drag a button into our storyboard here just below our label. And then we're going to double click on that button and change it so that it now says say hello. And I'm not sure if I put this in, but I'm going to put an exclamation mark in there. Okay, so I now have a button that says the word say hello on it, and what I want to do is I want to make it so that when I click that button, something happens over here in my program. However, before I do that, let's clear up and make a little bit of room here. These functions that start off in my code are going to be very useful later, but for right now, they're really just in the way and can cause problems. So I'm going to highlight all of those lines. It's very important that you get just the lines that start with override func view did load and ends at the end, the line after where it says dispose of any resources that can be recreated. Okay? Check carefully to make sure it's just these lines. You don't want to delete this extra curly brace at the end. Boom, delete that. And now I'm ready to go ahead and add new code here, and I'm going to once again do that by clicking and dragging over here, and I'm going to insert an outlet action or outlet collection. Last time we inserted an outlet, but in this case I'm adding something for a button, and what I want my button to do is actually do something. When I'm actually adding something that is supposed to make things happen, that's not an outlet, that's a connection. So I'm going to create a connection, and I'm going to call this my say hello button action. I'll magnify this for you. Say hello button action, and my type here is going to be UI button, And the last thing I'm going to change is arguments should always be none for the time being. So I'll leave that up for a moment. Your connection type is action. Your name is say hello button action. Your type is UI button. The event should stay touch up inside, and arguments should be none. When you have all of that, click connect, and you'll have some new lines of code here. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and we're going to insert what we want to occur when the person clicks on this button. So basically, when I click this button, this chunk of computer code gets executed. Whatever I say to do in here is what will happen in my app. Well, what do I actually want to happen? I want the words on this label, the text of this label, to change. Earlier in my program, I told the computer that when I want to refer to this label, I use this name. So I'm going to start typing that name because it's the thing that I want to affect. And notice as soon as I typed hell, it figured out that actually I most likely meant hello world. And if I just hit enter or return on my keyboard, it'll finish typing it for me. Now I have to say what attribute, what thing about this object, about hello world label outlet, do I want to change? Attributes are the things about the object itself. So the label, for example, has text. And I want to change that text to say hello world. Okay, so now when I run my app and then click my button, oops, say we'll run my app and pause for a moment while we wait for my app to actually start running. Here we go, it's coming up. And there it is, hello world. And I click say hello, and I see that my label has changed to now say hello world. Okay, so the next step in our project is going to be to take this to the next level. And in order to do that, I want this label not to be visible when I first run the program. So to make it so it's hidden when the program first runs, I use this thing over here called the Attributes Inspector. And so I click on this little icon right here. That's the Attributes Inspector. And then make sure that I have my label selected over here just by clicking on it once. And now over here on the right, I see all kinds of information about my label. And if I look down here in this section, I can see that there's a section that says hidden. And if I click on the hidden checkbox and look over at my storyboard, you'll notice that now this is turned dark gray. And what that's telling me is that if I run my app now, that this label is actually hidden from view. Well, that's great. That's what the rubric said I was supposed to do, except now I can't see that it says hello world. So what I have to do next is I have to go into my program here, and I also want it so that when I click on the say hello, it changes my hello world label to also no longer be hidden. Hidden is another attribute of this label, and the way I say not hidden is to say that its hidden nature, its hidden attribute, is now false because it is no longer hidden. Run my app again, and now I will see hello world. And so far, following this video, what I have managed to do is successfully get to the D- stage of the rubric. Check for other videos with helpful suggestions on how to reach the higher grade levels if you get stuck.